In today's interconnected world, tariffs have once again become a focal point in global economic policy, particularly in the United States. Advocates claim tariffs protect American jobs, bolster domestic manufacturing, and ensure fair competition, especially with trading giants like China. However, the truth about who actually pays for tariffs and their broader economic impact is complex and far-reaching. Despite their populist appeal, tariffs often act as an invisible tax on consumers and can increase inflationary pressures. In this in-depth video, we will explore what tariffs really mean for the economy, examining who truly pays the price, how tariffs impact American businesses and consumers, and why they continue to be a go-to political tool in the face of their economic drawbacks. Understanding tariffs, a primer. Tariffs are essentially taxes placed on goods and services imported from abroad. While they can be structured in various ways, there are two main types. Specific tariffs, a fixed fee imposed on each unit of an imported good, such as a $10 charge per pair of imported shoes. Ad valorem tariffs, a percentage-based fee calculated on the value of the imported good, like a 10% tariff on electronics. The objective of tariffs is to increase the cost of foreign-made goods, theoretically encouraging consumers to buy domestically produced alternatives. Tariffs are also intended to level the playing field in cases where foreign producers benefit from lower labor costs, government subsidies, or lax environmental standards. However, these increased costs ultimately impact U.S. consumers and businesses rather than the foreign companies exporting the goods. Who really pays for tariffs? Debunking the myths. One of the most persistent myths surrounding tariffs is the notion that foreign companies and governments bear the cost. In reality, tariffs are paid by American importers, businesses that bring in goods from abroad. When a tariff is levied on imported goods, it directly increases the price importers must pay for those goods. To offset the higher costs, businesses often pass these expenses on to consumers in the form of higher prices, meaning that it is ultimately American shoppers and businesses that feel the pinch. Imagine, for example, a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. For a U.S. car manufacturer that relies on these materials, the cost to produce each vehicle rises significantly. To maintain profit margins, the manufacturer will often raise prices on cars, resulting in a more expensive end product for American consumers. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods effectively raised the prices of consumer goods by as much as $1,000 per household each year, disproving the claim that tariffs only harm foreign exporters. How tariffs drive inflation. Tariffs, by increasing the cost of imported goods, contribute directly to inflation. Inflation, the general rise in prices across an economy, reduces the purchasing power of consumers and can destabilize household budgets, particularly for low- and middle-income families. When tariffs are applied to a wide range of goods, including essential commodities, the price increases create a ripple effect throughout the economy. This phenomenon has been especially noticeable since the U.S. imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, which include everything from electronics to clothing to household goods. For example, tariffs on imported Chinese textiles have increased the cost of apparel sold in the U.S., affecting everything from fast fashion to premium brands. Similarly, tariffs on electronics have driven up the prices of smartphones, laptops, and home appliances. The longer tariffs remain in effect, the more entrenched these price hikes become, making it harder for consumers to find affordable alternatives. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, tariffs contribute significantly to the current inflationary pressures in the U.S., with the inflationary impact of tariffs being most pronounced in sectors reliant on imported goods. The effect of tariffs on American businesses. The impact of tariffs on U.S. businesses is profound, particularly for those reliant on imported materials or components for production. When tariffs increase the cost of essential inputs, companies face a difficult choice: absorb the additional expenses and risk reduced profit margins, or pass these costs on to customers by raising prices. Both options have serious drawbacks, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises that lack the financial flexibility of large corporations. Some U.S. manufacturers, like those in the auto, electronics, and heavy machinery sectors, depend on foreign-made components to assemble their final products. The additional costs imposed by tariffs force these companies to raise prices, cut costs in other areas, or even move operations abroad to avoid tariffs altogether. Harley-Davidson, for example, shifted some production overseas after U.S. tariffs led to retaliatory tariffs from the European Union, making it harder to compete in international markets. This move, intended to cut costs, resulted in public backlash and illustrated how tariffs can create unintended economic consequences. Case studies: real-world impact of tariffs on American companies. Apple and electronics. As one of the world's largest companies, Apple relies on a global supply chain to assemble its products. Tariffs on Chinese-made components increased Apple's production costs, leading the company to explore options to relocate production outside of China, notably to countries like India and Vietnam. However, the complexity of Apple's supply chain and the high skill levels required for production mean that moving facilities is costly and time-consuming, with little immediate relief for consumers facing higher prices. Walmart and retailers. Walmart, the largest retailer in the U.S., imports a substantial portion of its inventory, including electronics, clothing, and home goods. The tariffs on Chinese imports directly impacted Walmart's costs, forcing it to either absorb losses or pass increased costs onto its customers, many of whom are lower-income shoppers. This example highlights how tariffs disproportionately impact those with limited financial means, who are often less able to absorb price increases on everyday essentials. Political appeal of tariffs. Why they persist despite economic drawbacks. Tariffs carry significant political appeal, often seen as a straightforward way to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition. For politicians, tariffs are a visible policy tool that can be easily communicated to voters as a way of standing up to economic rivals, promoting national self-sufficiency, and preserving American jobs. While this rhetoric resonates with some voters, the actual economic outcomes are far more complex. In many cases, tariffs harm the very industries they aim to protect by driving up costs, reducing competitiveness, and discouraging exports. Furthermore, tariffs can sometimes have the unintended effect of sparking trade wars. When one country imposes tariffs, it can prompt retaliatory measures from other nations, as seen with the European Union's tariffs on U.S. goods following Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. These retaliatory tariffs can hurt exporters and farmers who depend on international markets, disrupting supply chains and undermining the benefits that free trade usually provides. Who benefits? Who suffers? A closer look at tariff winners and losers. Winners. Some industries benefit from tariffs, particularly those that face intense competition from foreign producers. Domestic steel and aluminum manufacturers, for instance, saw a temporary rise in demand for U.S.-made metals after tariffs were imposed on foreign competitors. Losers. The biggest losers are consumers, who bear the brunt of higher prices. Additionally, industries that rely on imported materials and parts suffer as their production costs rise. Companies in the consumer electronics, automotive, and retail sectors are especially hard hit, as are the small businesses that lack the resources to absorb these added costs. The role of tariffs in a modern global economy. The persistence of tariffs in U.S. policy underscores a broader debate about how best to balance domestic interests with the realities of a global economy. In an interconnected world, countries rely on complex international supply chains to provide goods and services at competitive prices. Tariffs disrupt these systems, leading to inefficiencies, higher costs, and retaliatory measures that can stifle global trade. Instead of tariffs, some economists advocate for alternative strategies to bolster domestic industry, such as investing in education and job training, offering subsidies or tax incentives to critical industries, and negotiating fair trade agreements that enforce labor and environmental standards. These approaches, while requiring greater effort and investment, may yield more sustainable economic growth than the blunt instrument of tariffs. Tariffs, while politically appealing and occasionally effective for protecting certain industries, often result in unintended economic consequences that outweigh their benefits. They act as a hidden tax on consumers, drive up costs for businesses, and contribute to inflation. For the U.S. to thrive in a global economy, it is essential to consider alternatives to tariffs that address the root issues in trade imbalances without penalizing American consumers and businesses. A forward-thinking approach that embraces fair trade practices, supports workforce development, and fosters innovation can offer a more viable path toward economic resilience than tariffs alone.